The time has come. Unfortunately, this week we are saying goodbye to our Subaru Crosstrek long-term test vehicle that we've had for a 6-month period. The variant we've had for 6 months has been the 2-litre S petrol flagship model that's priced at $41,490 before on-road costs and is finished in a really lovely Sunblaze pearl. In today's video, we're going to be looking at everything I loved and didn't love so much about the Subaru Crosstrek over that 6-month tenure. We're also going to look at fuel economy, we're going to look at how many kilometers I traveled, and also what my favorite drive was during that tenure. But before we jump in and get started, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. So how far did I actually travel over the last 6 months? Well, I've done just under 8,000 kilometers in total, which is pretty impressive. I've done a lot of city driving, but just as much highway driving and those longer road trips, which really suits this vehicle. When I picked up the Subi, it had 700 kilometers on the clock, not much at all. So I've had a full tenure, I've run it in, I've tested it properly, and in this video, we're gonna sort of talk a little bit more about how it was over that long term. Now let's talk fuel economy to start with. It's pretty important with a car like this. It's gonna spend a lot of the time in the city, but also on the highway. Now Subaru does claim that this car will do 7.2 litres per 100 kilometers on the combined cycle. The lowest I ever saw was 6.8 litres per 100 on the car's computer, and the highest was around the 10 litres per 100 mark during really intensive city driving. However, after crunching all the numbers on this car, I got to a figure of 7.6 litres per 100 kilometers for the Crosstrek over that entire 6-month period. So you're probably wondering, how reliable was the Subaru Crosstrek over 8,000 kilometers of traveling? Well, for the most part, it was really solid. There was no creaks, rattles or squeaks. It was a really solid little unit. No strange noises, and I didn't have any problems with the engine or the transmission, which was a real big plus. And just for a bit of fun, my favorite road trip in the Crosstrek over the 6-month period was down to the Bundanon Art Gallery, which is about 2.5 hours south of Sydney, a gorgeous spot, and I was able to take some really nice pictures of the car. So what haven't I loved so much about the Crosstrek over the 6 months? Well, for the most part, the car is pretty well put together and drives quite well. However, the biggest problem lies right here in front of me, and that is with the engine and the CVT transmission, which I just don't think is up to spec. It's a bit unrefined, it's loud, thrashy, and I just think it could be so much better, especially if it had a 2.5 litre engine or even a turbocharged engine that is in the Subaru family already. Another thing I didn't like so much about the Crosstrek was some of its fuel economy in the city. It was a little bit high, sitting around 10 to 11 litres per 100, which is kind of a problem when you consider that this car will be a city-based car for most of the time. And the last thing that wasn't so good about the Crosstrek was some of its practicalities. Some was okay, but the boot was a little bit too small, and I think that some of its competitors are larger and you can fit more stuff in. So what did I really love about the Crosstrek? Well, a lot of it is inside the cabin right here in front of me. There's some really interesting things in here that make it a little bit quirky, a little bit different, but also very practical and very functional, which is just what you want from a city car. So this car, the 2-litre S, has a $3,000 premium over the mid-spec car, and that's because it's got some pretty important functionality and features built in, such as leather upholstered seats, satellite navigation, and you also get an excellent Harman Kardon 10-speaker sound system. Really good unit, really bassy, but full of character and awesome for Spotify, so I really recommend it. Now, standard tech in the Crosstrek is another one of its big talking points, one of its best points, and that's because of this 11.6-inch screen that's front and center. It works really well. You can sort of configure it however you like. I really like that you can do your Android Auto, but also have some of your key vehicle diagnostic stuff at the top, which I've had for the last 6 months. And also you've got your climate control built into that screen as well. However, one thing I really liked was that there's physical buttons to put the climate control up or down in temperature, which a lot of cars are doing away with now. So other little things that are really convenient, really nice about this car is the fact that it's got both USB-C and USB-A ports, as well as an auxiliary port. You don't see that too often in cars these days. Also, you've got heated seats for the front, and the driver's seat is power adjustable, but the passenger seat is not power adjustable, just so you know. And I also found that the 360-degree camera was particularly good because in my basement garage at home, it's very dark, it's hard to see. I've got a wall on one side and I've got a pole on the other side, and I can just really easily get in and out with the 360-degree camera. So that was a big plus point. So what are my final remarks on the driving dynamics of the Subaru Crosstrek? Well, other than the engine and CVT, which is definitely a bit of a letdown, I think the rest of the car drives pretty well. It's very comfortable, especially on pretty average Sydney streets where there's plenty of potholes, plenty of bumps to really upset a car's dynamics. But this car is nice and soft and compliant, and I found it really quite pleasant driving to and from work every single day during my tenure with the car. Now, this car excels also off the tarmac. It's really good on dirt roads, very neutral feeling. It's not wanting to slip out at any stage, very safe, very secure. And the same thing can be said about driving in wet weather conditions. So I drove through a lot of storms and rainy days, and I found this all-wheel drive system to just be so grippy, and it didn't have that problem where, like in a front drive car, where the wheels sometimes slip and carry on, and it doesn't really feel very secure and safe. So this car is as safe as it gets in terms of its all-wheel drive system and the amount of slip that it allows. Now, I must mention also, we didn't film it exactly, but we did get to drive the hybrid version of the Crosstrek, which turned out to be quite an interesting experience. It's much more of a mild hybrid than a full hybrid. I did a couple of fuel economy runs for the car, and it was a little bit more fuel efficient, and I think it actually paired nicer with the CVT and the 2-litre than this car does. So maybe that's one worth considering, the hybrid version in the future. Now, back to driving dynamics, I find that the steering is well weighted, although the steering wheel itself is a little bit tough on your hands. They say it's leather, but it feels a little bit hard and plasticky for leather. And as I said, suspension is good, compliant, soft, comfortable on a long cruise. I did some long road trips from Sydney to Brisbane and back, and this thing just ate up the Ks. It was really, really easy going, and the engine sort of settles nicely when it's only getting a little bit of throttle. But if you do plant the foot, you're trying to get out of an intersection or getting onto the highway, you're going to find that it's very loud. The CVT just whines and carries on. I actually sort of thought it was broken to start with, which isn't a great thing to think, but it just needs so much more refinement, this powertrain. And maybe with the 2.5-litre engine, we'll actually get there. We'll get to that point where the engine doesn't carry on so much and it's more powerful and more capable for daily driving. Now, a lot of people will buy the Subaru Crosstrek based off the fact that it is a very safe car, and I completely agree with that fact. Driving with this car for 6 months, it's got all the bells and whistles in terms of active safety. Its AEB is pretty good, it's pretty snappy, it seems to work exactly when you need it to. I've had one instance where someone stopped right in front of me and I didn't expect it, and the AEB just caught it like that. It was great. All in all, the lane keep assist is quite good. The adaptive cruise control is also pretty good. It seems to be well tuned. So you may be interested to know how fast a Crosstrek actually is. Well, we tested it at our proving facility in Sydney, and it wasn't very impressive. It got a best time of 9.48 seconds 0 to 100. So it's not very brisk, and in saying that, it's also, I think, can be a little bit unsafe when you're pulling out from a side intersection onto a 90 or 100 km/h road and there's cars coming. So this car has the 115 kilowatt, 196 Newton meter setup, and it's just very sluggish, very sluggish. And I think that that's actually more of a safety concern than anything. So really, a little bit more power for this car could be awesome. And it would be really good off-road too, because this car is capable off-road and it's very good with its articulation, but I just think that it's a little bit missing in the engine and the CVT department. But to wrap up on the driving, I think all in all, the car is a pretty good driver and it's going to suit a lot of people's tastes. It's safe, it's comfortable, it rides well, and it's pretty fuel efficient as well. So there's not much more that people will want from this car in terms of, it gives everything almost. I just wish the engine and the CVT transmission was a little better. So what are my final thoughts on this sad day where I have to give back the Subaru Crosstrek? Well, for the most part, this car does a very good job at its key target market, and that is city driving. It's comfortable, it's got good tech, and it's safe too, which is so important for so many Australian buyers. I think the Crosstrek would be very well suited to the adventurous type of Australian. I know there's a fair few of them out there that would really appreciate this car for camping, hiking, rock climbing, adventurous sports of any kind. It just has that sort of character to it that makes you want to go out and explore and really enjoy the open air. And at $41,490 before on road cost, the S is, I think, the pick of the range. It's $3,000 more expensive than the mid-tier Crosstrek, but it's so worth it with those added features, and that sound system is a real peach. But the Crosstrek isn't perfect, and I don't think any car really is, so this isn't a super huge deal. But still, that engine and CVT transmission, it does need some work. It's a little unpolished, a little revvy, a little loud, and it just could be that little bit better when you're driving around town, for instance. But there is a big positive to all this. Subaru Australia did confirm to me earlier in the year that wilderness variants that are available in North America are coming to Australia in the near future. What this means is that the Subaru Crosstrek could get a wilderness variant which gets a 2.5 litre engine, higher ground clearance and different gearing. That sounds like a peach to me, and I'm really looking forward to driving it in the near future. If you want more information about the long-term journey that I've had with the Subaru Crosstrek, then head straight to the Chasing Cars website, where you can find my detailed review. But what do you guys think about the new Subaru Crosstrek? Is it a small SUV that you'd consider? Well, leave a comment down below. And while you're there, like and subscribe to Chasing Cars.